What's up guys, Asian here again with another theory crafting video, and today we're going to be going over the stamina DK. Specifically, we're going to be going over monster helms for the stamina DK. Now, the tried and true monster helm for stamina DKs has always been Velidreth's. So if you take a look at Velidreth's here, that's Velidreth. Adds weapon damage for the one piece, and for the two piece has a 20% chance every time you deal damage to spawn 3 disease spores that deal 13,622 disease damage to the first enemy they hit, and this effect can occur once every 9 seconds. So Velidreth has been in the meta for Stam DPS since it's been released. So that's kind of what people have always used for stamina DPS. Now for stamDKs, with this move to a heavy attack rotation, another monster's helm has kind of come into contention with Velidreth's, and that's the helm you see here, Spawn of Mephala. The one piece adds max stamina, so losing out on some weapon damage there. And for the two piece, whenever you deal damage with a fully charged heavy attack, you create a web for 10 seconds that deals 15-18 poison damage every 1 second to all enemies within 4 meters. And reduces their movement speed by 50%. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. So now this is a very enticing set, as you can imagine, with the movement to a heavy attack build, with stamina DKs, as well as their class boost to poisoned effect and poison AoE damage. Mephala seems like a very powerful contender for best in slot monster helm for stamina DKs. So that's kind of what we're going to explore today. Which one is actually going to be better for you? So right now, let's start things off just by comparing the two sets in static, isolated from any other variables, any passives or anything like that. So Velidreth's versus Mephala's. Let's look at the one piece effect. Velidreth adds 129 spell damage, Mephala's adds 1096 max stamina. So Mephala's gives you some extra resources, which can't be discounted really. It just increases your resource pool, helps out your sustain just a little bit. So that is very nice. But the weapon damage is what we're really looking at here. Now, increasing your max stamina or magical pool will increase your effective weapon and spell damage. It's not reflected on your character tooltip, the one you see right here. It's not really reflected here, but it is included when the game calculates how much damage is being done by your abilities. So the formula is every 10.1, about every 10.1 extra resource that you have is equal to an additional 1 effective spell damage or weapon damage increase. So for Spawn of Mephala, a 1096 max stamina increase is effectively more or less 108 and 109 weapon damage increase. So Velidreth has Mephala's beat by 20 weapon damage, although Mephala's does give you extra stamina, so that does help you sustain a little bit. Now moving on to the two-piece effect. Just looking at straight DPS, we're going to assume best case scenario here, which is you proc both of them on cooldown, so Velidreth every 9 seconds, Mephala's every 10 seconds. And for Velidreth, you only get 1 disease spore to hit the boss in front of you because you're fighting against a boss with a smaller hitbox. So a couple of things here to keep in mind. Velidreth spawns 3 disease spores, so all 3 of those can actually hit the same boss depending on how large their hitbox is. For example, St. Ohms in Asylum and Manticora, the possessed Manticora in Sanctum Ophidia, Rako 2, even Rakat. I've seen Rakat get hit by 2 disease spores before. So you can get more than 1 disease spore to hit an enemy based on how big their hitbox is. Mephala's it only affects enemies within 4 meters of the proc. So if your boss is moving around a lot, that kind of reduces the effectiveness of Mephala's. So the thing also to consider with Velidreth is that you can have no disease spores hit the boss based on whether you're moving or if the boss is moving. Your disease spores might completely miss the boss, in which case you're dealing no DPS whatsoever. With Mephala, at least you're guaranteed to get at least that 1 1 second proc if the boss somehow decides to move away from you. There's not many bosses off the top of my head that I know of that will move so rapidly. In Asylum, both St. Lothus and St. Felms have teleport moves. They teleport around the arena a lot. in let's say that's really it. Those are the main two ones that I can think of. The twins in Maw, the twins move around a lot. You're going to be moving around a lot in Zazhasha in Maw as well. Rako 2 is pretty much stand there and hit them. The top boss or the bottom boss, basically the second boss in Hell Ra, is also a very mobile fight. You're moving around a lot, so that's something else to keep in mind. So, you know, each of these monster helms have their downsides in there as well as their strengths over each other. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. But for right now, let's look at things in isolation. So we know Mephala's DPS, if you proc it on cooldown, it's 1518 because it deals that much damage every 1 second. That's how much DPS it's doing. Now for Velidreth, assuming that we get one proc every 9 seconds, basically have it on cooldown. Let's transition over to R to calculate things out. 13,622 damage over every 9 seconds works out to be 1513 DPS. So on cooldown, assuming only one disease spore hits, Mephala's does out DPS Velidreth by a small amount. You also have to keep in mind Velidreth is a proc set, so you're not necessarily going to have it proc on cooldown every 9 seconds. So basically how you can calculate out the probability that you will get your proc chance to occur in 1 second is basically using the binomial distribution. In mathematics, it's basically known as the at least x successes. So the general formula is for this is 1 minus quantity, this is in parentheses here, 1 minus parentheses 1 minus p, which is the probability of the success happening. So in the case of Velidreth, it's going to be 0.2, and that quantity, that 1 minus p, is raised to n, which is the number of procs that you, number of trials that you're doing. Let's swap over back to ESO. So every 1 second, you have your dots running. So for stamDK, you have Blood Craze, Venomous Claws 2, Noxious Breath 3, Rearming Trap 4, Endless Hail makes 5, Poison Injection is 6, Razor Caltrops makes 7, and if you're using an axe, you also have the Axe Bleed, which makes 8. If you decide to use an axe, then we'll call it 7.5 in terms for our calculations here. So going back to R here, so we have 1 minus 0.2. We're going to raise that to 7.5. So we have an 81% chance, on average, of proccing Velidreths in a given second, assuming we have all 7 dots down. If we have all 7 dots down and we're not using an axe, it's 79%. If you're using the axe, then it's 83%. So obviously, that's not really what you want to look for. It's not 100% basically, and it's never going to reach 100% because it's always going to be 1 minus some quantity. So now, if you have that, now you can basically calculate out how many seconds is it going to take basically for you to get a proc chance. This is again using the binomial distribution, so we're going to be using the 0.79 from the assuming you don't have an axe. So it's basically the same idea. 1 minus the quantity, 1 minus our chances of proccing is 0.79 chances of success. And basically we're going to raise this. Let's say we want to figure out every 3 seconds. So we have a 99% chance of within 3 seconds of getting a Velidreth to proc. Every 2 seconds, it's 95% chance, about 90. We'll round it up to 96. So at most, you're looking at basically a 10-second cooldown on Velidreth, an effective 10 to 11 second cooldown on Velidreth effectively based on the proc chance alone, assuming you have all your dots running. This is very optimistic. You're probably not going to have all your dots up necessarily, but in a best case scenario, that's kind of what you're looking at in terms of Velidreths. So if we take that into consideration and do 13,622 divided by worst case scenario, you have every 3 seconds off cooldown, so you add 9 plus 3 makes 12, or 11, I should say. So we have 1238, and that's kind of the effective DPS of Velidreth, what you can reasonably expect. And now Mephala, obviously, you're not going to get it on cooldown either, so let's say you also have it on a 11 second or 12 second cooldown. So we have 1518.0 divided by 11, 1380. If we have it on a 12 second cooldown, that's 1265. If you have it on a 13 second cooldown, it's 1167. So just based purely on these two sets in pure isolation, it seems that Mephala would beat out Velidreth. Now, is that going to work out in practice? That's what we're going to find out. So jumping back to ESO, we're going to be doing two parses today. We're going to be doing one with Velidreth and one with Mephala, and we're going to figure out which one is actually going to be better for you. So, without further ado, I need to eat my food. So the only thing we're going to be changing out is going to be the monster helm. All the traits are going to be exact same, all the weights. You have heavy divines with health enchants for each, medium with stamina divines for each, for the helm. So let's go ahead and get these things started so we can figure out this question once and for all. So that was our Velidreth's proc, Velidreth's Parse. Alright, looks like the other skeleton does get hit by Caltrops. Oh well. So now we're going to be doing another Parse, this time with Spawn of Mephala. The only thing we're changing here is just monster helm. Remember that. Just gonna wait for our stamina to recharge a little bit here before we get started. That should be good enough. So you see those spider legs on the ground, that is the area effect for the Mephala proc. So as soon as your boss or enemy leaves that area, they are no longer being damaged or affected by Mephala. So as you can see, it's a fairly small area. Alright, so there we have it. Those are our two parses, so let's go ahead and take a look at common metrics. Just gotta wait to get out of combat with that one skeleton. There we go. Alright, so this was the Mephala's parse. So let's see if we can find Mephala here. don't see the Mephala anywhere. Oh, this is the Mephala's parse. Apologies. Here we go, Mephala's web 1080. So just based on our DPS calculations from earlier, we're obviously not getting it at 10 every 10 seconds as we expected. It's probably closer to between 13 and 14 seconds. So that's kind of what you're looking at here. Of course, it is a Monster Helms proc, so it does not crit at all. Now if we look at our Velidreth's proc here, see if we can find Velidreth's. Okay, this is interesting. Velidreth does not appear to show up here on our DPS, on combat metrics, which is kind of interesting. It means one of two things. Either we didn't actually hit the dummy with Velidreth's, which is actually not that good for the Mephala parse, because that means we could have hit higher with the Velidreth parse, or the Velidreth's proc damage is not actually being registered in combat metrics. So let's just go with Velidreth is not actually hitting the dummy. We can easily test that, whether it's being calculated by... oh wait, I'm wearing Mephala's. I don't want to wear Mephala's. I want to wear Velidreth's. We can use another dummy to see if it's combat metrics or... Alright, we got... hopefully that hit. Let's do a couple more just to be safe. I'll stand here and let our dots tick away. Hopefully they'll proc Velidreth's. Try to get one more proc out. There we go. Are we gonna get one more? Nope, doesn't look like it. Alright. Okay, so it is a comment metrics problem. It looks like... oh, I lied. Oh no, it's not a comment metrics problem. Velidreth does actually show up, so... well, that doesn't look good for the Mephala parse. If Velidreth is not showing up here, that means we didn't actually hit our dummy with Velidreth's. And as you can see here, our parses are more or less equal. Mephala's pulled a little bit higher here, about 200 higher compared to this with just a Velidreth. But if Velidreth had procced, I mean, here it pulled 756 DPS, kind of to be expected. I mean, it wasn't really a full parse, so full rotation, so we can't expect it to be at its full DPS. But even if it did that much, it'd probably end up out DPSing Mephala. Keep in mind that this is just one data point for each, so can't really draw any definitive conclusions. But it would seem like Velidreth does, or at least should, outparse Mephala's by a slim margin. I don't anticipate it beating out Mephala's by a huge margin, but that certainly seems to be the case. If we didn't hit the dummy with this Velidreth's parse, and we're still pulling about the same as with Mephala hitting, then it stands to reason that if Velidreth had hit, we'd be pulling at least 500 DPS higher, at least. So that's kind of what it is. Then Velidreth beats out Mephala's on a stamina DK. So that's it for this video. I hope you found this to be informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.